This week, I'm gonna address a topic for the first time that will appear on this channel time and again: Harry Potter. If you somehow aren't familiar with the franchise yet, Harry Potter is a series of fantasy novels by British writer Joanne K. Rowling that follow the titular boy and his friends over the 7 years that they attend the Hogwarts School for Witchcraft and Wizardry. Today, I will take a look at some of its inspirations. So welcome once again to Secret Origins. This video won't have any major spoilers, but I urge you to read the book anyway. The novels aren't only a part of the canon of fantasy novels, but also of another one, which it has eclipsed. That would be school stories, novels about the adventures of boarding school students. Because those books were most popular in England between the middle of the 19th century and the end of World War II, there is a big difference between the schools in those books and Hogwarts. The schools in those books were one gender only. Since Rowling revived the genre in the 90s, a time where gender-separated schools were thankfully not much of a thing anymore, the only things that are gender separated in Hogwarts are the dorms and toilets. As I said before, Hogwarts is no ordinary school, but a school for witchcraft and wizardry. Those words are used pretty synonymously with each other within the novels. Historically though, there is quite a big difference between those words. It's true that they describe the same concept, supernatural powers that humans can learn as a skill. The difference though is the connotation of those terms. Wizardry is a neutral to positive term, while witchcraft is almost always used negatively. Both of those terms, and the more neutral term magic, have been used in medieval times to describe things that are today parts of the sciences. For the most part, those have been chemistry and biology, especially medicine. Both of these sciences can, of course, be studied and taught. In the Middle Ages, people were doing just that, but it was nowhere near as mainstream as it is today. So much so that people saw it as magic. Chemistry was viewed a lot more positively than biology was. The form of chemistry most popular in the Middle Ages, alchemy, was a lot less scientific than today's chemistry is, but its goal was the same: to understand what stuff is made up of and to try and change some of it. For alchemy, that was most famously trying to turn cheaper materials into gold, sometimes by means of a magic item known as a philosopher's stone, or to you Yankees, the sorcerer's stone. One of the people trying to do that was 14th century French scribe and manuscript seller Nicolas Flamel. Before having a part in the first Harry Potter novel, people already started to make up stories about him in the 17th century, when people mystified him so much that some people weren't sure anymore whether he was an actual historical person. Getting back to the medieval times, this kind of science was mostly seen as wizardry, not witchcraft, because there was really no downside to it. Biology, especially medicine, however, was often seen as witchcraft. One of the reasons for this was that if somebody has the power to heal somebody, they also have the power to kill somebody. There is also a huge gendered aspect to the difference between wizardry and witchcraft. For the obvious reason, I don't really feel qualified to talk about this. That's why I won't go into all of this in this video, but I will outsource this topic. Sometime during the next weeks, there will be a video on this channel by someone else about it. One thing I'm gonna say about witches, though, is that Rowling turned their mystical main form of transportation, broom riding, into the sport Quidditch. While Hogwarts seems to use both terms for magic interchangeably, there still seem to be multiple forms of magic. The teacher of potions, which has elements of both chemistry and medicine, makes snide remarks about classes that focus on wand usage. He might actually have a real-world point with this, because these other subjects don't have a real-world basis since, well, magic wands aren't a thing. They are, however, inspired by sticks that people wave in front of audiences in the real world, being a combination of the staffs that priests of many religions use in ceremonies and the wands that stage magicians wave around with their right hand, so we don't notice what they are doing with their left hand. Let's move away from the wizards for a while and talk about other creatures in the wizarding world. They mostly come from mythologies of different cultures. Let's take a look at some of the creatures that inhabit the wizarding world and see which cultures they originate from. Sometimes that's pretty easy. Centaurs are Greco-Roman, phoenixes are Egyptian, ghouls are Arabic, trolls are Nordic, but with a few creatures it's not that easy. As it turns out, multiple cultures share some of the same mythological creatures. Ghosts, giants, werewolves, mermaids, unicorns. These all appear in the novels and in the mythologies of multiple cultures. For two of those creatures, ghosts and giants, this doesn't seem to be too unlikely, but werewolves, mermaids and especially unicorns just seem to be such specific concepts that it's kinda surprising that stuff like this was used in multiple mythologies. A select few of the creatures don't seem to have any background other than Rowling's own fantasy. The best example of that would be the Dementors, soul-sucking hooded humanoid creatures, the very presence of which can make some people feel helpless. As someone who is prone to depression myself, some of the descriptions of how Harry is feeling when being around Dementors hit pretty close to home. Since Rowling is pretty open about her own depression, her ability to write about such experiences in a gripping way shouldn't be much of a surprise. There are two major differences between real-world depression and encounters with Dementors though. The first is that depression doesn't necessarily require a trigger like an encounter with a Dementor would be. There are, of course, cases in which people slip into depression because of a trigger, but often people just slip into it for no apparent reason. The other difference is that in the novels, the reason that Harry is affected by the Dementor attacks more heavily than his friends is that he has more traumatic experiences than they do. In the real world, some people who never experienced any trauma suffer from depression. What, however, is true for both real-world depression and the Dementor attacks is that chocolate is the best treatment. I'm gonna leave it there for this week because I fear this is getting too long already. Rest assured, I will come back to Harry Potter and the next installment of Secret Origins will come sooner than this one did. So subscribe if you're interested in either of those, and if there's anything you want to know the Secret Origins of, tell me in the comments or on social media. I hope you have a magical week and I'll see you next Tuesday.